me turn. All right, I've got the recording on. All right, so who's going to kick us off tonight? Tonight we're doing, it's not going to let me minimize. Let's see. Let me do that one. All right, let's see. Okay, I am recording. Yep, the light's blinking. All right, so what we need to do is whoever's going to be presenting needs to request control so you can show your whatever you're going to show on the screen. And so.
Okay, we can go first if that's okay with my group.
Yeah, that's fine. And that way DeAndre might be able to get on.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So I just need to pull up the presentation.
And
there's somewhere that I can do share screen. I'm doing that right now.
And Hazim, there should be an updated version of the PowerPoint coming across to you via email from us.
Okay.
Did you guys see this?
No.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay, let me do this. I'm pulling it up now. I'm sorry, but my computer, my laptop might be just a little tad slow.
All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make you the host.
Okay.
And you'll have to give it back to me by going to participants and then clicking on me, and then it has a little more button. So I'm going to make you, yes. Okay, Pat is now the host.
Okay, I saw that come up. Okay, can y'all see it now?
Nope.
So what am I doing wrong?
You'll need to go to share screen.
Okay.
And then go to desktop and see if that'll do it.
Okay. So I can't click on my PowerPoint.
Go to desktop. And then if you've got your PowerPoint up already, and if you've already got it up, you can click on it.
Okay, I had it up before, but it didn't, you guys couldn't see it.
Still can't.
All right, Barbara, can you bring yours up? Cause I don't know, I mean, I had it up and you guys couldn't see it. So I did click screen. Wait a minute. Okay, now let me try. Okay.
I'm now viewing Patricia Oliver's screen.
Okay, okay, awesome. Thank you.
There you go.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Okay. So, name of the presentation, measuring organizational effectiveness in the nonprofit sector. And this is the case of the Community Action Network. And the presenter now I want to do slideshow. So I click on slideshow, right? From the beginning.
There you go.
Okay. So I just want to tell you a little bit about this case study. Now, Luke Sorensen, he is the director of the Community Action Network, which is also known as CAN. It's a large collaboration of nonprofit organizations and government agencies that work on social services and community development in the city of Austin. And what he did was he asked a consultant friend to assist the agency in operationalizing organizational effectiveness. Now, due to the economic downturn, the unemployment, which was low, less money coming in, and also an increase in budget cuts. So many of CAN's partners organizations needed to rethink their relationship with various funding sources. So what CAN operates as a hub or a clearinghouse for the nonprofit community. Now the organization felt that it would be valuable to do some research and create a report about measuring organizational effectiveness in the nonprofit sector. They wanted something official and authoritative so their partners could use it to inform their decisions and they could share with various funding agencies. Now, CAN is requesting the consultant to complete an executive report about ways of measuring organizational effectiveness in the nonprofit sector. They needed to know they needed to think about this issue with recommendations for nonprofit organizations and funding agencies. Now, the consultant received a file from Mr. Sorensen that outlined the parameters of the task and included research relevant to measuring effectiveness in the nonprofit sector, as well as the names and location of several of CAN members that had different perspectives, when it came to defining, and measuring effectiveness in the nonprofit sector. So the consultant was handed the task, and he only had 4 months to research and interview, okay, and come up with recommendation for his executive report. Now, Barbara is going to speak with you now about the background research for our case study.
Okay, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right. We based our information on Herman and Rentz's articles and looked at how nonprofits measure effectiveness, both quantitatively and qualitatively. And what Herman and Rentz found was that just pure quantitative data wasn't enough. And that there needed to be more qualitative measures because of the different groups that are interested in different aspects of a nonprofit. And everybody has a different opinion about what those factors are that indicate effectiveness. So from their research, they found that nonprofit effectiveness is always a matter of comparison, although you do have to differentiate between the different types of nonprofit organizations that there are. In most cases, people are comparing one group with another group when they start talking about both quantitative and qualitative measures. Also, effectiveness is multidimensional. It's not just numbers served or good financial management skills. There's more to a nonprofit and what makes it effective than just numbers or widgets or whatever. Effectiveness is also a social construction, which means that it's based on what individuals believe are the indicators of effectiveness. And so that social construction or that belief system or perception that people have is something that you need to pay attention to because they are placing value on the organization based on that perception that they have. They also, people tend to look at effectiveness in terms of responsiveness. How responsive is the organization to the need in the community or to whatever their mission is, to requests from other groups or people who have an idea of what they think your nonprofit ought to be about, how you respond to them then helps to create that social construction. And finally, effectiveness in nonprofits requires different levels of analysis based on the stakeholder's perspective. And you have to appreciate each group's perspective so that when you report your effectiveness in communications, that you are telling the different groups, the different stakeholders, what they're interested in hearing to then influence their perception. So there's a different perspective. A client has a different perspective of what's an effective nonprofit or effective service than a funder does, than an employee does, than a volunteer does, or even a board member might have a very different perspective of what's effective and what's not. So the article talked about the consultant going out and asking different stakeholders what their perspectives were to then give him a better understanding of where each group is coming from. And so the first person that he talked with was Dr. Lori Lewis, who is a professor of communication studies. And her response to nonprofit effectiveness is that it's intimately connected to the mission of the organization. The mission of the nonprofit is its identity. And most nonprofits are interested in impacting things that are difficult to quantify. And so the key is the perception of effectiveness, and these come from the social constructions that are created together through interactions with various stakeholders and members. And then communication plays a key role in these perceptions. Then he talked to a funding agency and asked Lucinda Beckett, who is the director of the local United Way, how does her organization define effectiveness? Since they fund nonprofit organizations, what is it that they're looking for or want to hear from a nonprofit in order to measure how effective it's being? So the director of United Way said that nonprofits need to quantify and measure things that are quantifiable and create a relevant process and evaluate the overall quality of that process. So it's more than just best practices. It's about having a process that you stick to and then measuring that process across time to show change or show effectiveness. It's not enough to do good work. Our job is to explain the processes needed to influence the important outcomes, and then show how your work is facilitating or supporting those processes. She went to a foundation, which he talked with Larry Schell, and the foundation's perspective was that CAN and many of its partners need to move towards a business model of operations, that successful nonprofits need to show a clear return on investment. We give you this much money, you serve how many people, how from a business model point of view, how are you fiscally doing? Then they went to a nonprofit service provider, which in this case was a homeless shelter. And Roderick Buchan, who was the director there, said that from his perspective, there's a continual push for nonprofits to become more business-like, but this does not reflect the heart of their work, of what they are about and what their mission is about. And he believes that funders need to believe in the value of the mission and that their job is to impress upon their funders the value of or the heart of why they're doing what they're doing. And if that means that one person or one group gets more than another, then that's because that's what they needed, not because there's X number of people and we divide the amount of money by that many people and that's how much it costs. And the next one, Pat. And so the task was to come up with 5 recommendations to then present to the CAN organization, which is all of these groups together, and try to educate them all on how every stakeholder sees things in a different way. And so nonprofits need to figure out a way to communicate to the stakeholder that they are addressing in the way that they're expecting to hear. So research on effective nonprofits found that the first thing that you need to do, and the most effective nonprofits do, is they identify their mission and they stay within the parameters of that mission. They create ways to measure both the quantifiable and the qualifiable parts of their mission. And that's the work of the board as well as the individual leadership in the nonprofit, is to look at their mission and say, if heart is what we're about, then how are we going to measure that in a way that those stakeholders who are interested in hearing about that see us as effective? The second thing that you need to do is identify your stakeholders and understand their social construction of your organization. What do they value? And use those as measures of effectiveness. And the only way to do that is through more communication and more work with the different groups and finding out from their perspective what's the most important thing. What do they want to hear about? The third thing is to communicate effectiveness to the various stakeholders on a multidimensional level. Communicate quantitative and qualitative measures of effectiveness through everything from your annual report to newspaper articles, to newsletters, to the interactions that everybody within the organization, including the board, have with all the stakeholders out in the community, so that there's a consistent message that's coming across depending on the groups that they're talking with, that is emphasizing the aspect of effectiveness that that group wants to hear or needs to see in order to feel like that is an effective nonprofit. The fourth one is create and maintain a socially constructed messages constantly to the stakeholders based on their perceptions. So it's not good enough to just say, we served 27 people this month and 4 of them got better. It needs to be, well, if you're a drug and alcohol rehab, then what's effective? What's working? Why do some people need more than others? What other stakeholders in the community are involved? Are you an island and all by yourself, or are you asking for help from others? How are you building support for your clients by the communications that you do with the other people in the community who want to help or are reaching out? And the fifth one is to understand and manage the perceptions of responsiveness through good communications between and among your stakeholders, local agencies, and various individuals and groups in the community. Recognize that codependency on all nonprofits have with their funders, their clients, their employees, and their volunteers that live and work in the communities that they serve. It's important, like if you get your clients from mental health and they're referring to your organization, if the counselors and therapists at mental health don't think you're a very effective nonprofit, that you're not doing a very good job, it doesn't matter if you showed that you had 100% cure rate, which is impossible, of course, but if you said that you had that, what they're seeing does not verify that. Therefore, you're going to have to communicate with them in a different way than you would with somebody who's giving you money for mental health clients and substance abuse. It could be that the local AA groups and NA groups your feeder group. Once a person gets out of your services, gets out of your organization, you refer them to AA and NA. Well, if everybody at AA and NA says that you're not worth a darn and that y'all don't help anybody, it won't take long for that to do in your nonprofit. So you have to figure out ways to show maybe that AA and NA are very much a part of your program and that they are actually involved with your clients before they leave your setting. and you have to talk with them about what do y'all think our nonprofit ought to be doing to help support NA and AA in the community. So it then becomes more important to look at what do each one of these groups think. What does DSS think? What does the hospital think? What do the clients who've been there before think? And then what do your funders think? Because each one of them has a different definition of effectiveness. A lot of times funders think that in a drug and alcohol treatment center that in 16 to 18 days, that person should come out and no longer be an alcoholic. That's a lack of education on that nonprofit part for helping people understand that there is no cure for alcoholism. But there are support systems that, when they're created and supported, can help people to stay off of alcohol and not drink anymore. But that it takes more than 18 days to become an alcoholic, and it takes more than 18 days to stop being an alcoholic. Okay. Next one, Pat. So we looked at some of the things that you need to do. So managing your social constructs, or the way that people look at you, is to adhere to your mission, from the selection of your board members to what funds you seek. Base everything on its alignment with your mission. There were several examples in the literature where people were offered, let's say, $10,000 from a funder. But the expectations that funder had for them, as far as accountability, made it not worth the $10,000 because of the amount of staff time and the amount of work that it was going to take for that group to measure up to that funder's expectations. And so filtering everything through your mission, is that what we're about? Is this going to help us move forward in our organization? Sometimes can help you to be effective, because you're matching where you're getting your funds from with what you are about and what you're doing. You need to be consistent and make decisions based on your mission and the values that it dictates. If one group calls and says, oh, we want you to come over here and do this, and that's not a part of your mission and not something that you've done before, then you might need to ask, is that really the direction that we need to be going? Because if you're not going to be successful at it, that's going to impact your reputation, much more so than the amount of money they may have offered you to come and do that for them. Cultivate relationships with your stakeholders and keep two-way channels of communication open at all times. Know where you stand and how you are being perceived. And that comes within, from employees and board members, as well as outside the community, and information that you're getting back or people are reporting back to you that they're hearing in the community. And the fourth one is manage your stakeholder relations and perception. I appreciate that no one operates in isolation, and that stakeholders are interdependent among various nonprofits and outside organizations. People talk, so make sure that they say good things about you. And one of the examples was where there were multiple nonprofits in the same location doing basically the same services. But one was very good at telling their story about who they served and how well those people were doing now that they were out of services. And in fact had come back into the organization as volunteers or as board members, because they felt so good about the work that that organization was doing. Well, then they started looking at where referrals were coming from. They were all coming from the agencies that those successful clients had come from, because they went back and said, that was the best thing you ever did, was refer me to so-and-so's nonprofit. They did such great work and they helped me so much. Well, then the next time somebody comes along with that problem, that's where that referring agency is going to send people, because they've heard and seen that there was success. Or there might be multiple referral resources, but you only accept referrals from one particular group, then everybody gets to the point, well, we won't refer anybody to you because you never accept our referrals. You give this other group a priority. And so you have to be careful and be aware that you're being perceived in multi-dimensional levels, and from all people who come in contact with your nonprofit. Next. Mindy, you're up.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So when we're talking, we're looking at the fourth question, and it said choose a nonprofit. And so we were talking about Meals on Wheels and the vision that they have and how they stick to that vision and that mission and how they're effective. So Meals on Wheels, of course, is where they are helping seniors to stay nourished and be independent and have dignity. And it's empowering local community programs to improve the health and overall life so that no seniors are left hungry or isolated. When we think about looking at a large nonprofit, one of the things that was talked about in the readings was to look at other nonprofits that are similar. Pat, will you switch to the next page? So when I was thinking about it, about other organizations, it kind of caught me off guard trying to figure out ones that were similar. These two organizations were established within, actually 3 organizations were established within 15 years of each other. Meals on Wheels was established in 1954 in the United States. Before that, it was in England and Australia, starting after World War II. St. Jude's, they were established in, no, goodness, I just forgot the time, 1962, and the Special Olympics is 1954, so they're the oldest one that we have. Each one of these has a specific thing that they do. If you look at St. Jude's, their focus is on pediatric prevention of catastrophic disease and treatments. As you know, the commercials tell it every time you're on TV late at night talking about St. Jude's. It's very specific, the same way that Meals on Wheels is a very specific population and has similar structure, similar size. Special Olympics, again, very specific population that they're serving for a specific purpose. They are training athletes of individuals with mild to moderate learning disabilities, physical disabilities, to help them grow in sports training and athletic competition. So it's very specific in what they do. So comparing the 3 by the size and organization. Now, when we look at this, Special Olympics is a little bit bigger because it reaches more countries than St. Jude's and Meals on Wheels. But for this, I was just focusing on the United States. Pat, the next page, please. So when we're looking at ways to evaluate, one of the ways is promising practices, which this is the first time that I heard about. This is from the article. And basically, promising practices are in place of best practices because in order for a best practice, it should meet 7 criteria. Over time, show quantifiable gains, be innovative, recognized for positive results, be replicable, be relevant, adopting the organization, not be limited to a unique organizational characteristic or generalizable. So the authors found that the things that we have right now, they could not find any that came close to meeting all of these criteria. So when we look at it, we're looking at practices that they should examine that are promising evidence of potential values, not exact. So that's one of the things that I thought was unique about this. So it's looking at those areas. Things to utilize when you're comparing resources is, in today's society, we have the World Wide Web at our fingertips. So actually looking up the audited annual reports, financial statements, and the IRS 990 reports or forms. to give you the information on the money side of the organization. Most charities will list these on their website. If not, you can go on the government websites and find them. Also, their annual reports that are required by outside agencies. They each year, even Mars Hill, we have an annual report that we create and we publish for public viewing. Pat, will you click on that first give charity org address and see if it links it? This link is actually
No, I'm sorry, wrong.
okay. Oh, it's loading slowly. If it's like me, it was there. Okay, so this is the Better Business Bureau, and this is one of the links that was found when I was researching. And so, according to the Better Business Bureau, will you scroll down just a little bit? Meets the standards. So it's showing what areas it meets the standards. It also gives you information about the governance, the staff, their fundraising, their tax status, and their financial. So it's a tool that is created by individuals that aren't part of the organization that you can look at, because unfortunately I watch a lot of crime TV, and a lot of the crime TV, it's about white collar theft, you know, all these companies that people are buying into, and they're getting reports, but they're not checking third parties. So it's looking at those third party reports to see that this is a valid organization and what they are sharing. Okay, can you go back to the slide, Pat?
Okay, which slide? Where is it?
Did I mess you up?
Wait a minute. I'm just going to click out of here. Maybe it'll take me back. Well, it didn't. Okay.
There it is.
Okay. You want me
There
to go
it
to the next one?
And the next one. And this is basically the Wheels on Meals website. When I was looking at it, it was the fact sheet on North Carolina. So they prepared a fact sheet for each of the states where you can pull up and see the facts based on data sources. They use the Census Bureau information and data that is provided through those resources to help individuals get a better idea about the number of people that are struggling, why they're doing what they want to do, why it's important. And the facts are, you know, improving health, remaining at home, feeling safe and secure. And it goes over that information. Their website had quite a bit of information on that. Okay, go back to the PowerPoint, Pat.
Okay.
So it's another area of resources to review and look at. Can you go to the next sheet, please? The other are the qualitative methods, the personal stories, the things that get a lot of our hearts. Some of this can be done through the website. Others are personal blogs where individuals who are affected by the charity to see their stories, local newscasts, articles that have been completed on the individuals. For me, this is actually a family member of mine, Uncle Junior, who had Meals on Wheels. He was legally blind, a World War II veteran, and it allowed him to stay in his home and be that person for almost 3 years before he had to have assistance and not live at home. But because of what other family members saw, they began volunteering for Meals on Wheels and taking meals out to other people because they saw the importance of it. So it's finding those stories like that that help when you're looking at a charity to use that qualitative method in the information that you're sharing with others. And for most of your nonprofit organizations, you can find these stories quite easily. like I said, through the internet, through now, you have a lot of bloggers that blog on specific topics, as well as the newscast. I believe that's mine, Pat. Next slide, please, Pat. So when we look at it overall, it is taking the time to look at multiple areas. Resources that we use for this were, of course, some websites and two, the articles that were in our main overall presentation or case study. Any questions or any, Barbara or Pat, you want to add to a conclusion of it?
What I like to end up saying is I would love to read his report, what the consultant turned in 4 months later.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to read that report because he was able to, you know, speak with someone that was in communication. You know, she explained how communication and nonprofit really went hand in hand. And then he was able to talk to Mr. Shea, which is the director of Austin Foundation, and he was all business, and he thinks that a nonprofit should be treated like a business, where you have Mr. Buskin, who is the director of the homeless shelter, and he's saying, no, not so. That we need to treat people with care, with, you know, love on them, care for them, help them, and not so much as us being a business. So with all this combination of knowledge and understanding that he got from all three parties, I would be so interested to know how he wrote his report.
I'm hoping it's going to look like ours, Pat.
Yes, that would be nice.
It was just very interesting to see the different levels. Like we've always talked about in my field about best practices, the best practices for higher education, for housing, for student conduct, and then to find out that not every area has best practices that are tried true. That was eye-opening because I thought that everything had best practices. Everybody had that standard that they used. And that's a challenge then that I think some more need to look at.
Yes, yes, it is. So, you know, so here I am thinking, is it possible that nonprofit in the near future can actually become a business? I mean, it's getting that way anyway. And I don't know about you guys, but even at my church, it's really a business as so much as a church. Yes, it is a temple and we worship God there. But if you write a check and it doesn't clear at the bank, we're not going to call you and say, well, that's okay, sweetie, don't worry about it. No, you're going to pay that check and plus the non-sufficient fee. So, you know, I mean, and that's one of the things that I'm seeing is that even churches are becoming a business, and they have to, because if they don't, you know, the chances of churches closing down because they're putting too much of feeling, maybe too much of understanding, and not letting people do some things that's really costing organizations and churches and different organizations for them to close down. And that's what Dr. Sheila was talking about. That if we didn't do what we did, do you realize how many places that were closed down if we didn't do what we did? So, you know, there is a lot to really think about here. And it's just a lot to think about if nonprofit organizations, C503, if they would end up becoming a business more so of a nonprofit organization. I just wouldn't be surprised.
I thought it was interesting. I had a conversation with my nonprofit about this because I was interested in understanding how United Way plays into that. And in the Abuse Prevention Council, we get a large sum of money. And the executive director told me that they've already been notified that United Ways across the country are changing the way that they are distributing their funds. And they're moving more towards funding projects Whereas we have always asked for a X amount of dollars, taking somebody with us to say how wonderful APC is and how much it's helped them and their family. And then United Way took all the money they got in and they sort of divvied it up among all of the nonprofits. Well, I remember reading a couple of years ago that the Mecklenburg, when they got into big trouble with their United Way and found out that like their executive director was making over $1 million, that they stepped back and changed the way that they were distributing the money. And they have gone to what they're calling project-based funding. So I then asked my executive director, what would a project for the Abuse Prevention Council look like? I mean, what would our project be? Because, you know, we have all of these different areas that we serve, from the court system and people who come in to take out warrants, to the police when they go to domestic violence are called in, to people who walk in and say that they're victims of domestic violence, to sexual assault, where we get phone calls like from the hospital or from doctor's offices, and people self-report through the hotline. What would a project look like that would get us that amount of money from United Way? And they said, that's a really good question. I guess we'll find out when they have the call for all nonprofits to come and learn about the process of applying for United Way funding this year. But that's really quite intimidating when we get federal and state dollars, but our United Way dollars are local money and are spent mostly in maintaining the facility and in salaries and that kind of thing. That's not a project, you know. So what kind of project are we going to write that's going to support 5 positions and the payment on the copier? If that's the way they're going to look at us now, and I thought that was very interesting. In fact, to the point that I think I'm going to call United Way and go have a conversation with the executive director and just ask, how are you going to shift when you've got so many nonprofits here in our local area that are dependent upon that money and have consistently gotten about the same amount of money for the last 10, 12 years. I mean, I could see where they could suddenly lose $50,000 of their money because it's not a project and they're only going to pay for projects. Mm-hmm. And how many projects are they going to pay for? And how will we divvy up all the things we do into separate little projects? And what will we do if they don't fund one of them? So it's a quandary, but an interesting one, because they too are moving towards quantitative analysis much more than they are to qualitative analysis. And I think it's because there's so many nonprofits that aren't fiscally well managed. Mm-hmm. And so everybody who is, because we get state and federal money, so you can count on the fact that not only are we audited, but you know, we have to account for every dime, and you can't move certain things between certain line items and that kind of thing because of the structure of the way state and federal monies are spent. But some of these nonprofits don't have any of those. And so, you know, are we suffering the consequences because they're not good fiscal managers? Or all the people in are good grant writers who can divvy up everything they do into tiny little projects, going to get more money just because they're good grant writers? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but it's interesting.
Yeah, very much so.
All right.
For us, Dr. Lamb, guys.
All right. Let's see.
We can ask now, or
Yeah.
Just a question. You mentioned a lot about mission. You talk a lot about mission. And do you believe, or do you think it's important to to pay attention for mission when dealing with effectiveness? It's important, the mission?
I think absolutely. Mission gives you direction. Mission gives you the parameters within which you're supposed to be working or functioning. And so you stray from your mission, though, and then you are going to be judged as not effective.
Yeah, just remember this is non-profit organization.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think part of it as well is when you are out soliciting for support and monies, you have the mission to say, this is what we do. And if you are going to support us, this is how your money will be used. We use this mission, and this is how it supports. So if you want to do such and such over here, that's fantastic. We don't do that, but here are some groups that do. So it helps connect with the people that are giving or prospective givers to show them exactly what you do and that you're staying in your line and you're not going out on these limbs just because somebody will give you $100,000.
Okay.
But good question.
Good question.
Other questions? Okay, let's see. Okay. Pat, if you will go back to participants and give the control back to me.
Okay. Mr. Lamb, just click on you.
Mm-hmm. And it will say more at the end of the line.
Yes.
And it will allow you to make me the host again.
Do I need to click on more?
Yes.
And
Once you do that, it will allow you to change the host from you to me.
was it play, enter, exit, chime?
No. When you click on participants, it'll give you the list of the 6 participants today.
Yeah.
Then when you click on or highlight me, it will have more, and you can go to the end of that. And
So if I click on you and click on more,
mm-hmm.
and then make host.
That's correct.
You got it.
All right, thank you. You are now the host. All right, share screen. Back to the desktop. All righty. All right. All right. Okay. All right, can you see my screen again?
Yes.
All right, Barbara, here's the answer to your question. We may not be in exactly this format, but this is what a lot of nonprofits are being asked to do now. You were talking about United Way is going to do more project funding. What they want to know is what activities you're going to do, what timeline, who's going to do it, what resources are going to be needed, how it's going to be assessed, both formatively and summatively, what the goal is and what your indicator of success is. They want data. They want to be able to show their constituents, the people who give them money, that the people they give the money to are producing results, something that's measurable with that project-based funding. And so it'll be something that looks like that.
Interesting. Okay.
There's actually a worksheet in your bottom folder
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I found that today.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
I just didn't know what to do with it.
Mm-hmm. This is what nonprofit, this is going to be the future of nonprofit funding right here.
Okay.
This is going to be the future. Given the national scandal with the Charlotte United Way, not only are they going to have to show where they gave the money to and that they didn't keep it all, but that what the people that they gave it to did with it. And it's going to have, when we talk about project-based, it's probably not going to be a lot different. What you actually do is not going to be a lot different than what you do now. But you're going to have to put it in this graphic organizer in these parameters. Because there's assessments. Formative assessment in this is of the adults. Are they doing what you said they were going to deliver? It's not, summative assessment is the results. Did you get results? What was your goal? And what is your indicator of success? Our goal might be that every one of our homeless people get a job. But an indicator of success is this year, if we have 3 out of 10 that do, that's pretty successful.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have students all the time who ask, what's the difference between goal and indicator of success? A goal is the biggie, where we're headed. Indicator, but we may not get there in 1 year or one funding cycle. We can't do it all at one time. And so that indicator of success kind of saves you. If your goal is again, that we've got, 25 people in our adult ed program at a community college. Our goal is that they all get their GED this year. A more realistic goal or indicator of success would be if 5 of the 25 got their GED this year. That gives you some wiggle room so that you don't set your standards so set the goal so high that it's not achievable. But you want goals that that are meaningful. But again, it may take us some steps to get there. But this is it. Again, formative assessment is of the adults. How are you going to make sure that these persons responsible over here are actually doing what you said they were going to be doing? You can't just take our money and at the end of the year and say, oops, they didn't bother to do that, by the way. And that happened. That used to happen a lot.
So it's kind of like an IEP where they start with the goal is the child will, be on grade level. But they're already 5 grade levels behind. So
that's correct.
Baby steps along the way. But ultimately, this is what we're all working for.
Yeah, we're going to get him there eventually.
Yeah, okay.
We're going to get him there eventually, but we're not going to make it. We're not going to make up 5 grade levels in 1 year.
Right.
But we're going to get him there eventually. But what we need to be doing, and what the people who get the money need to make sure that they're doing, is that I can't speak to this enough. For you folks who are in this DEOL program, that's the backbone of this graphic organizer, is that formative assessment. You're the people, you're the leadership. You've got to make sure that your people are actually doing what they said. This is a fidelity check. Are we doing what we said we were going to be doing?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that in essence is what you are doing. That is your job as the leadership, is to make sure if we said we're going to be, in Barbara's example, that we're going to be doing 3 lessons a week for this kid outside of his normal lessons, somebody's got to go make sure 3 lessons a week are being delivered.
Right.
If we say we're going to do X, Y, and Z, somebody's got to go check that we're doing X, Y, and Z. That's usually the breakdown organization, is that we don't have a process.
Right. I know that this group that I'm working with, last fall, we did assessment of what our strengths and weaknesses were, and did all that. And so they were talking 2 days ago about our annual retreat and what were we going to talk about. And I, of course, said, well, we're going to talk about how far we've got on our strengths and weaknesses and our SWOT. We laid out all these things and we picked the top 5. Now we need to go back and see, did we do it? or how far along are we on that? And that was like a novel idea to everybody who was sitting there, like, oh, well, that's a good idea. It was kind of like, what are y'all going to do? Just come up with 5 more things you're going to do next year without looking at were you successful on the ones that you started last year?
Exactly.
Okay.
You need organizationally to put yourself through this. Even if your funding source doesn't make you, you need to have a process like this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what are we going to do? How, you know, and yeah, I hate most of all when I see something like this or a SMART goal or whatever, and it says the person's responsible. It says staff. I never knew anything to get done if it was, you know, if staff was done.
Right. Did anybody even tell staff that they were supposed to be?
Exactly. How do you hold staff accountable?
Right. Did staff know they were staff?
Exactly.
Okay. That makes sense. I think that that helps me. Sorry, yeah.
I think this is the future. Well, you know, I get in a rant about this place of too much. I love working at Gardner Webb, and I love the mission and the idea of Gardner Webb. I'm a little perturbed with the organization and leadership in terms of processes. You know, I told you that my office is here in Lindsay, and if we went right across the hall and looked out the window, we'd be looking right down at DCC, the Dover Campus Center, with the cafeteria. But that's the staging area right outside the front door of our building. Here is the staging area. They have all the spaces blocked off where all the visitors, the parents and students, come for their campus visits. And I told you that, you know, they've got this nice process where students meet them in golf carts and all that. But my complaint is there's never an adult there supervising them. And how do we know that that's going well or not going well? I told you there was a huge mound of trash there 3 or 4 weeks ago. The kids didn't know what to do. You know, there was no adult there. Now, what did that group of parents remember about their visit to Gardner Webb?
Right.
And kids. Mm-hmm. Well, there was nobody out there, you know, doing a fidelity check, making sure everything was okay. There was no responsible adult out there, just a bunch of kids and a big mound of garbage. So that's the impression that we left that group of visitors with that day. And so, see, that's just mindless to me that yeah, we got some docents, we got some kids that are volunteers to take them around, but where were the adults that should have been out there supervising that? Somebody should have shown up to do a formative assessment. That's the heart of any process, procedure, action plan, SMART goal. The heart of it is the formative assessment. Somebody in charge has to come and make sure folks are doing what they're supposed to be doing. That's kind of why they have you to be there in charge. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just like school people. You don't teach a soul. They pay you to show up to make sure that the other folks show up and teach what they're supposed to. Right. You know, so I'm big on process, but I'm bigger on fidelity checks, formative assessment. So that was the answer to your question. To get back to something that Pat said, I want to make sure that we hit upon that. Resource distribution is not about dividing the money equally among people. And you're going to have to fight for it as a nonprofit, even more so in the future, which links back to this model I have on the board. If you can run this and show people, you know, that we're running a tight ship here. We know exactly who's going to do who, what, where, and when. We've got our formative assessment. That means I, as the leader or the leadership in this nonprofit, is going to be making sure all this stuff happens. Then hopefully you will get your share of the funding. Because the days of just dividing it up and sending it out, those days are over. It's not going to be done that way anymore. It's not going to be divided equally. I have one last point that was made tonight. Some money's not worth it.
Right.
Some money's not worth it.
Yeah.
In terms of what you have to do or the costs that you might incur, personnel that you might have to hire, the ongoing maintenance or facility cost of keeping a building up and keeping it open. if you get money to build a building, or not all money's worth it. You can't chase every dollar. And this gets back to something that Hazim asked, a question he asked, is mission important? Do you need to follow your mission? Well, sometimes the money doesn't follow your mission, and you have to make sure. Or sometimes the money is just not worth it. We're going to give you $5 million to build a building and put our name on it. It's going to cost you $20 million. You're going to have to come up with some of your, operating, from your reserve, maybe take out a loan, and it's going to cost you $2 million a year to keep the building open. The question is it worth it? I guess, the Tucker Center was built on an act of faith that more people would come along and give money. I'm not sure that has happened. And so that sometimes nonprofits, what they do more than facilities is they get into personnel. We take this money to do this work, but we have to hire a bunch of people, and in the end, our personnel costs swamp us, or our management and those kinds of things, and we didn't realize how much it would actually, in terms of time, money, effort, that it was going to take to supervise these new people, or those issues, those personnel issues eat us up. And so in terms of nonprofit, remember, all money is not created equal. And if it's outside of your mission, or if it's going to require a lot of in-kind goods or services or money, and that's like what I was, I'll give you $5 million, but you're going to have to match 15 in order to build this. Well, they took the 5. They thought other people would give. They didn't, and they had to end up borrowing 12 of the 15. And so, it was an act of fate. They thought people would give, maybe some other folks would give, but they didn't. And so the university owes a $12 million balloon payment coming up here in about a year and a half, 2.5 years, I think. Because they thought that they would take it out in the balloon that other folks would give, and they didn't. And so we're going to have to stop operating on faith and operate as a business. And that was a point that was brought out in your presentation. Nonprofits, and Pat made that just like with churches. Nonprofits are going to have to act more like business. We can't. I know that church is based on faith, but and a college, a Baptist college like Gardner Webb, is based on faith.
Yeah.
But faith won't pay the bills, folks. I'm sorry. Right. I don't mean to be ugly. Right. I don't mean to be a bigger heathen than I already am, but you're going to have to make more business-like decisions. You got $20 million here. You got 5 of it. You got more money coming in, but it's taking you $2 million extra to keep it up every year. So you got to make the $2 million up on giving, plus, to then more than that, to try to attack the principal. I'm not sure that was a very sound business decision. Now, I would say that if it was full of people every day, it's not. Hazim's sitting over there right now. It's closed on Friday evening because there's nobody to go over there. This is, it's not a thriving place anytime. There's just hardly ever anybody there, except when there's special events or conferences or things that, different departments around the school do. But in terms of being a student center and being a thriving place, the location is bad. It's not going to work. Now, that aside, but here's the problem. But even if it were the hub of the campus now, and even if it were thriving, you still can't pay for it. It looks doubly bad when it's a ghost town over there. It's a big white elephant. But but even if it's a thriving place, for example, a church wants to build a fellowship hall. Every church wants to build a fellowship hall. We're going to use it. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Well, that's fine. But does your giving sustain that?
Right.
Does your giving, do you have enough to be able to build it? And does your giving sustain it? Because it's going to incur a lot. So, well, it'll be you. And I've heard that argument. I've heard that, oh, it'll be you. That's not the question. Whether it will be you or not, the question is can you afford it and sustain it? Those are not questions that nonprofits have traditionally asked. They just haven't. They're going to have to. They're going to have to ask those questions. I'm chair of the board of a nonprofit, and that's first thing that I do and have for the last 21 years is I've been working with this nonprofit is that can we afford it and can we afford the ongoing costs? If we can't, then we can't do it. We have to be grown people here and make real business decisions. We can't just make decisions with our heart and make them on faith. I'm a big Eric Clapton fan, and one of my favorite of his songs is "Running on Faith." But you can't do that in a business sense. You can do that in your personal life. You run on faith in your personal life, and that I firmly believe that, and that's a good thing. But not in the business sense. Can't do it. That was an excellent presentation, and so now. Who is going to do the presentation for the Rusty Brittany DeAndre Hazine group?
I will.
All right. So what I need to do, I need to go back to me. All right. And then I need to do this. I need to go to Magic. I need to go to Brittany and go to More. And I made Brittany the host. Yes. All right. Brittany
Awesome.
is now the host. It started screen sharing. Excellent.
Oh.
There we go.
All right, here we go, everyone.
Unnamed consultant.
All right, let me see if I can move things around a little bit.
All right.
All right. So, good evening, everybody. Our presentation tonight is on measuring organizational effectiveness in the nonprofit sector, the case of the Community Action Network by Mr. Hazim Al-Mamani, Rusty Graham, DeAndre Howard, and myself. So our presentation content, it includes learning objectives, background, key characters, the central problem, additional red flags, plan of action and discussion, concluding comments, and references. Mr. Graham will be talking about the objectives, the background, and key characters. I will be discussing the central problem and additional red flags on my behalf and for the behalf of DeAndre, since he was unable to make it with us tonight. I will include his contributions for that. And Hazim will be discussing our plan of action and discussion, and he will also end with concluding comments. So thank you for being here, and we'll get started.
Our learning objectives. The first one is to help you understand the complicated issue of measuring organizational effectiveness in the nonprofit sector. Number two, to recognize the tensions in the nonprofit sector between business-like approaches to organizational development and more holistic approaches to service provision. And three, to learn more about the role of communication and the social construct of organizational effectiveness. What we found interesting about this case and getting into it and understanding the background a little bit was a lot of us come from different walks of life in this group. And when we're talking about that, all of us have played different roles in nonprofit organizations and in business itself. So we do see some of the differences. So the background of this case, similar to what the other group talked about, it was an unnamed consultant met with an old college friend, Luke, who is the director of the Community Action Network. Canada's large collaboration of nonprofit organizations and government agencies that work on social services and community development. Luke explained there was an increased pressure from funders for nonprofits to measure and demonstrate the effectiveness of their organization. A preliminary research given to the consultant by Luke sent him on a quest for research and interviews with various individuals experienced in the nonprofit sector. After completing the research and interviews, the consultant sat down and began his report. Oh, yes. Oh, well. So what I thought out, go ahead and put the people up if you don't mind. What I thought was really interesting was the fact that he had a little bit of the research handed to him, and it helped him along the way. How do you like our unnamed consultant?
Yeah.
Yeah. As we're looking here, of course, Luke gave the information. Then they went ahead and they read some of the work of Robert Herman and David Renz, professors who research nonprofits, which to me I've always found interesting. When you're actually reading research, has a tendency to either be very current or not current at all. Yes. So if we're looking at 10 years of research, in 10 years, the economy of the U.S. has changed dramatically. And I think, like we were talking about earlier, the funding situation kind of made it more interesting because we've never heard of project funding before. Before it was, we give so much to this organization, give so much to another one.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And, the reality is now they're wanting to see what the project is going to be, and I don't blame them.
Right.
The world changed 10 years ago financially, 2007, folks.
Yeah.
Different day.
Definitely.
Good point.
As we look at this, we can see some of the different approaches here. The Austin Foundation, looking at Larry's position, Larry pretty much had the position of it needed to look more like a business. It needed to make sense. It had to be measurable, which made sense. I mean, if you're giving out money, you want to make sure that there's an end result that you can say, this is what we did with our money. Compared to poor Roderick, who definitely is more social thinking, and that if we fixed two people's lives, we made a huge difference. We discussed a lot about how the differences in these two personalities is truly very prevalent right now in the nonprofit world. We want to try to save everybody, but to do that, it's an expensive trip.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't do that. We have to do something along the way. And I think it was interesting when we talked a little bit about Dr. Laurie Lewis, talking about how communications is so important. And we discussed earlier how mission statements, nonprofits hurt themselves by not having a clear mission statement. Realistically, you can't have a mission statement that says we're going to end all racism in the world. It's not measurable, right?
Right.
You can always try to fix problems, but you can't try to fix the big one at one time. It's got to be something reasonable within a time frame. And actually being able to put something in your mission statement that draws people to it. I think that's some of the big things we got from this area. Everybody like our key characters so far?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not going to say who created that, but I'll give it to Brittany for credit.
Hey,
I don't know who Luke Sorensen is. Is he a movie star or something?
that's Luke Bryan, a country music singer.
Oh, okay.
And Roderick kind of rhymes with Broderick. So
Right. Now that person I knew who he was.
absolutely. So I'm going to take over now for speaking. Thank you, Mr. Graham, for your contributions. Whenever the unnamed consultant was speaking with Miss Laurie, she used an analogy, and if you look at the case, it's on page 155. She said, think about it like this. She reached for the Newton's cradle, and that's what the illustration there is trying to depict. It has 5 suspended metal balls that swing back and forth. If I swing the first ball, it hits the others and makes the ball on the end move. The first ball has no contact with the last ball, but the momentum and energy of the first ball passes through the system and eventually impacts the last ball. So the other method for that is indirect influence. So collaboratively, we feel that the central problem in this case is that this organization is nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
And there is not a standard method for measuring effectiveness and impact. So I'm going to discuss further why that is our central problem. Along with this central problem, one must consider the following. This is what I really want us to talk about, and feel free if you want to at this point in time, Rusty or Hazim or anyone for that matter. along with the central problem, one must consider the following. In the nonprofit sector, there are often many benefactors or stakeholders that contribute to the financial success of the institution and want to see the benefits of what they have done. If you give someone a $20 bill that asks you for it out in public, Rusty Graham does it quite frequently, he will contribute to the needy. If someone says, hey, I need some money, I'm starving, you expect them to take that $20 bill and go to the nearest restaurant and get them a meal, correct?
Well, that's what you would think, yes.
That's exactly what you think. Same
No,
principle.
I think they'd go get a bottle of booze.
Yeah, that's probably what's going to happen, Mandy. But in the nonprofit sector, think about if your church does mission work. We do not have a transparent eyeball. We cannot gaze and see what is happening on the mission field. We just, in good faith, give our offering and hope that they are doing exactly what they're supposed to. At our church, for example, we, we donate to these organizations, but we expect to get at least, quarterly reports, that talks about, what the money's going towards and, what's been happening, what are the current needs. So that should be taken into consideration whenever dealing with this central problem. You don't know for sure what resources are being allocated where.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly,
That's right.
I want to take a turn for statistics. Reliability and validity are not considered. What this means, you have to test something to prove it, to be reliable. You need validity to go along with that.
Mm-hmm.
How can we pinpoint and measure that what the nonprofit organization is doing, it's actually doing what it says it is doing? So whenever I look into something, I might have a different perspective than Dr. Lamb or Barbara or Mindy. It just all depends. You don't have something baseline that says, okay, this is what this should do. These are the results I should see. This means success. This means failure. So that should definitely be considered. So, additional red flags. DeAndre included this information, so I'm presenting this on his behalf. He said that the organization seems to be over idealistic. There's just too much going on. And also there's an unseen kind of interwoven conflict between insiders and those who are providing funding. There's kind of the mentality in the case that, you should trust us to do the work we say that we are doing. Or it's a work of the heart. And then you also have other individuals that speak that talk about how the nonprofit should be more business-like.
Mm-hmm.
Just overall, this inability to measure the impact and secure is what's causing a lack of funds to come from the donors. Other things to look into is essentially several members of the nonprofit organization have identified solutions without identifying the problem. I believe that it was Roderick, he mentioned that, our donors or, different funders are pushing us to be more business-like.
Mm-hmm.
And then he kind of did the comparison between, the work of the heart versus, business work. And, that really causes an unseen struggle. And that brings up point number 4. An unseen struggle is occurring between performing a work of the heart and conducting good business. Someone that is more mathematically inclined or business inclined may feel that, numbers are essential. Just take it, for example, the emergency department. We push, to get someone seen, triage, treated, everything within a 3-hour span of time, out the door. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but it doesn't mean that those that are discharged at the 4-hour mark have, not received the same type of treatment as someone that can leave within, 2 to 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it just depends on the different variables. And I think that one of the terms that our group's kind of coined is situational dependency. Depending on the situation depends on the outcome. So that's where those two worlds combine. It's the clash of qualitative versus quantitative, if I may say so. We have different issues, and we have different populations that are served, different risks, different benefits, but within the nonprofit spectrum, it's hard to get an exact figure on that, because like with the Newton's Cradle example, you might go from ball to ball, that ball's impacted the other one, but you had to start from somewhere. So I think that's what's really missing in this case. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Hazim, and Hazim, just let me know whenever you need me to advance, sir.
Okay, guys. Yeah, the National Council of Nonprofits and its state association network encourage nonprofits to embrace a culture that supports evaluating the difference an organization is making. Some tips for achieving this include: identify what does success look like, make a plan to get to that point, and collecting information along the way to evaluate whether the nonprofit's progress is actually getting the organization closer to success. Communicate what's discovered and use those lessons learned to continuously improve performance. Actually, this organization also needs to implement a system of transparency. That maybe it's like there's a lack of that. We didn't see any information about that. But that includes effective communication and collaboration between the organization, employees, and the board of directors and other stakeholders. And I believe also the people who give the services, it's important to contact them. Although it's difficult to capture this data in a quantitative manner because we deal with social services. So it's difficult to have numbers. The organization can also capture data in a qualitative manner, for example, interviews, follow-up surveys, and personal tours, and media publications, thank you cards. I like this one, thank you cards. It's like feedback. Sometimes you have to get some feedbacks, and present it informally and upon request. Maybe the most important things here, the recommendations, the comments about this case. Any measures should focus more about the quality of the services, which means somehow we have to meet the people who get that services in order to know the quality. So not to focus just about the mission. We have to focus to the other side who get the services. And also nonprofit organizations must use many different criteria to measure effectiveness. There is no one criteria. It means it depends about what's your services is. We should understand that we deal with social constructions. When it comes to the nonprofit sector, there's not a specific strategy under which effectiveness is measured. The question here is, what we need to measure here, what we need to do, what's the problem here? We need to do the thing right or to do the right things. What do you think, guys? Can anyone let me know what we want to do here? To do the thing right or to do the right thing? What do you think?
Well,
I think it should be do the right thing when you're looking at it, because you need to do what's right for the organization and what's coming in.
No, you think the problem with this organization is that they didn't do the right thing? Didn't do the right thing.
I think they ventured out where they shouldn't have, and they strayed from what they truly do.
Yeah, actually, this is like the differences between the effectiveness or the efficiency. Which one we have to deal with? If you want to do the right, the thing in right way, we have to deal with efficiency. We don't have to do anything with the effectiveness. But if we have to do the right things, that's what you say, so we have to deal with effectiveness.
I think it's more I don't think it's an either or. I think it is both. And we have to create assessment processes, evaluative processes that allow us to demonstrate both, that we are doing the right thing and we're doing the thing that we do the right way. So I think it's kind of a balance of those, and depending on what aspect you're talking about, meeting the needs of the people that we serve versus meeting the criteria of the people who give us the money so that we can continue to do the service. It's a balancing act ongoingly, and that's where that communication and constant reminders to the different stakeholders of what you're doing right with their money, as well as to the stakeholders that you're doing it with, that you're doing the right thing for those clients. So I think it's a balance of those two. I don't think it's either or.
Yeah, well, actually, when we have a problem with the efficiency, we have to understand that we have a problem with the process itself. So we need to reframe the process because there's a problem in the process, in the management. But when we deal with effectiveness, which means we have to do the right things, we have to deal with the leadership, which is something different. So here, I believe we have to do something with leadership in this organization. And in this case, we have to tie or to find the link between the mission statement and the services. In order to get that, we have to do maybe some surveys, some interviews with the people who give the services. We have no problem with the process. The problem is the link between the statement, our mission, and our outcomes, our outputs, which is under our goal.
But I think you're also assuming that those outputs are all measurable and quantifiable, and I don't think that they are. I think some of the outputs, for example, with Meals on Wheels, one of the things that we talked about was that if you're going to quantify Meals on Wheels, that it's how many meals did you serve and how many families did you impact, and last month or last year. But the difficult part is what else did you offer by showing up with a meal that supported that person remaining in their home independently without having to move out of their home? What other resources did you connect them with when you went there and found out their air conditioning wasn't working? So you reported it back to your supervisor, who then picked up the phone and called somebody in another nonprofit who's responsible for making sure that the elderly don't live in houses that are at 100 degrees. I mean, there's just so much to it that I don't think it's all quantifiable. And so I think that you have to, there is that constant balance that you are about. But those things that are quantifiable, like your financial stability, your ability to show that, we spent X amount of dollars on this, and this is what we bought, and here it is, and you can look at it and touch it. or these are how many meals that we paid for, and this is how much it costs us a day to provide those. Those are all quantifiable, but there is so much rich data that's available in that interaction between that volunteer and that client that you go over to their house that you also have to figure out a way to capture and measure, because if I'm giving my money to Meals on Wheels, I don't care how many meals that you serve. I care about, are there people who didn't get any meals because y'all ran out of money? I care about how many people got to stay in their homes for how much longer than they normally would have, like Mindy's uncle, because of Meals on Wheels. I mean, those are the soft side. Those are the qualifying aspects of it. So I don't think you can
And
just...
if you are a benefactor, that is a reasonable request.
Right.
That's right.
And those are going to be the things that when you come to me, if you come to me as a funder and say, okay, you gave me $25,000 last year and that only lasted 9 months, I'm going to need some more money. I'm going to say, well, then you need, what, a fourth more than what I gave you. So you need basically about $6,000 more than I gave you last year to cover those last months. Versus if you came to me as a church and said, we have so many families that we can't cover, we need more money. They're going to say, well, then we have to find you money. They're not even going to say, how much was it? It's like, what do you mean there's families who don't get Meals on Wheels and are on the waiting list?
And Barbara, I believe when we talk about effectiveness, it's something inside the organization. It's something not outside an organization. It's not about the sources. It's not about the fundraising. It's about something about the process. So it's something more about management rather than marketing, or how to deal as organization with other organizations, or how to fund your services. It's not about that. That's another thing. Maybe it's a part of marketing or something else, or your statement. Somebody will contact you and give you that money because your mission, not because you have effectiveness or you have efficiency or you have all of this stuff. But this is something under the organization itself in order to success and continue running, or to endorse and stop running. It's something about that. We saw many churches, they stop everywhere around the world because not because the fundraising, it's because the process itself. And because that we have sometimes to measure if it's effectiveness or no. If we achieve our services, our goals. Any questions? Any questions?
No.
Very good. Enjoy.
I agree with Zim that it's a leadership problem, not a financial problem.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I agree with you on that.
I mean, that's
Right, because you can have all the money in the world, but if you're not meeting your mission and not doing what you said you're going to do, then you're not effective.
no, and leadership finds a way to fulfill their mission with the resources that they have, not with the resources that they'd like to have.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But there's what is it they say? There's never enough money.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And so most of the time, financial crises are not financial crises at all. They're leadership crises.
Mm-hmm.
And Hazim, as he said, this belief that somebody's going to come along and give me something.
Yeah.
That, again, running on faith. Faith is a good thing in your personal life, but you can't operate a nonprofit on faith.
No.
That somebody's going to come along. You have to work efficiencies and processes, and you have to adjust your mission and or your services, not your mission. You have to adjust your services to the resources that you have.
That's right.
And if you don't do that, that's not a crisis of finance. That's a crisis of leadership. You know, so this case study, in many ways, is to try to teach you the difference between a crisis, a financial crisis, and a crisis or lack of leadership. That's going to come home in the second one in 16A next time. It's going to be even more so, but hopefully you'll begin to kind of see a theme here that nonprofits are going to have to show results, either qualitative or quantitative or both. That's going to be an expectation. They're going to have action plans, SMART goals. They're going to have to do many business-like things where they can show people this is what we're going to do, or this is what we did with your money. And that the leadership took an active fidelity, a part in the fidelity, making sure that those things were getting delivered. They didn't just tell people to go out and do it and assume that it got done. That's what leadership is to make sure that the workers in the organization follow through with the things that they're supposed to do in the way that you want them done. I read something yesterday. A city worker or city government in Raleigh, North Carolina, a fellow was sending out ugly tweets. And he got demoted. Got to keep his job. He got about, I don't know, $8,000 or $9,000 demotion in his pay. And the mayor of the town said these tweets do not reflect it's not reflective of our administration of our town, of our governance structure. And I would beg to differ with that. Now, either you take a leadership stand and say we can't have this person in our organization, but to just to do a little financial demotion, because somebody complained, I'm not sure that the problem is the tweeting. I think the leadership set the tone where that person felt it was okay to do that to begin with. Now, that somebody created a big stink and that he got an $8,000 or $9,000 pay demotion or pay cut or whatever, but still that's not enough. It's either this is kind of a binary. It's one or zero. It's all or nothing. You're pregnant or you're not.
Right.
You either did this, and we're not going to support it as an organization, and you can't be a part of our organization, or we've been called on the carpet because you got caught, and so we'll do a little something on the side. Well, that's a leadership problem. That's exactly what that is.
Right.
If either punish the man, either he can't work for you, or leave him alone, one or the other. But this is these little mea culpas and little small concessions and maybe a give back or not. You can't do that. I mean, you see what's happened at Uber.
Yep.
You see what's happened there. He has to go. There can be he comes back with a changed role or any of that.
What are y'all talking about? What happened?
The founder and CEO of Uber has been suspended indefinitely by the board.
God. By the board?
Yeah, because he has set a culture where it was okay to be sexist and misogynist and racist and all these other isms. It's okay because it's Silicon Valley, and if you've ever seen that TV show Silicon Valley, you understand that that's how that they operate there. And he was a big perpetuator of that culture. And so they have now suspended him indefinitely. But the notion that, oh, we'll bring him back later on in a different role. No, either he's gone or he isn't.
Right.
Either
right.
leave him alone and let him work, or he has to go. Now, in my opinion, he has to go. There is no bringing him back. There's no salvation. There's no rehabilitation.
Yeah. Same way with the prison system.
We either stand for that kind of stuff or we don't.
Right.
And, that's the thing about nonprofits. And this kind of gets back maybe to even where Hazem was talking earlier. That you have a mission as a nonprofit. And it's your highest calling, and you're doing it, for the betterment of God or mankind or whatever. And there's a higher standard of behavior. Now, Uber is a private business, but even in any company, there's a standard of behavior either you will or you won't allow. And nonprofits, it's much more stringent, in my opinion, than publics. But either you stand for it or you don't. Mm-hmm. So when the mayor of Raleigh, cut the guy's salary $8,000 or whatever, I felt immediately that a lot of folks in the organization probably agreed with his views. And so again, that's a crisis of leadership. Leadership has to step up and do what leaders do. In most organizations, profit and nonprofit, 95% of the decisions could be made by anybody on the street with normal intelligence. It's the 5% that sets you apart as the leader. The hard ones, the ones where you have to say, no, we won't be that. That's not who we are. We're not going to do that. We're going to do this. The hard ones are, yeah, we'd love to have another building on campus, that would be a shining memorial to my leadership, but we can't afford it. We can't take that money and then can't pay the bill later on when it comes due. Or we can't run on faith. To get back to Pat's example with the church. I mean, you got to pay your bills at church. You got to pay your tithe.
Right.
Your checks can't bounce. We can't keep the doors open on faith. They don't, there's no line at the grocery store for faith or prestige. It's cash only. It's the same way when you have to pay your power bill and your water bill. It's cash only. And so, we're going to have to learn more to be more business oriented in nonprofits. We're going to, as Zim said, we're going to have to look at the leadership, or it can't just be, well, we like that person and they're a good person or that stuff. We have to look at whether they're effective or not. Mm-hmm.
We actually just had that issue here. We had a part-time position and a full-time position that oversaw the part-time, and the full-time is retiring, and the part-time assumed that they would automatically be put in the position, and they were informed that no, that we're posting the position and we'll do some interviews and encourage the person to apply. Yeah. But we need to do this. We just can't put people in positions just because they've been here. And they become a very, very negative, and their notice is in and they're gone.
Right.
Because now they're saying, well, I wouldn't take the position now. I'm like, well, that's fine. Maybe it's good that you go, because I don't want somebody in there that's got that attitude. So
that I'm owed something, or it's my turn.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's the reason why
they don't need it.
Right. And I think also that's the reason why certain leadership positions, that what they end up doing is they want to hire a fresh face. They want to hire someone new, someone that don't know people in there, someone that will come in with a different perspective. You need that. And sometimes leaders, sometimes companies would do that. We had one person at Hanes Brand. We had just got into a new software system, and the guy was promoted to a senior manager in information systems. I mean, $20,000-$30,000 increase in salary. Plus, he was bonus level, meaning that he'll get $10,000 to $25,000 a year. I mean, every year for bonuses, depending on the company's profit. I mean, so he was up there, just bought him a brand new car and everything. Well, he was working on the system one night, and he was talking with the software company, somebody in customer service. And so he was so mad because they could not help him figure out what was going on with their system. And so he said, y'all need to take the damn thing and blow it up.
Ooh.
Well, how about it was 2 weeks, it was 2 months after 9/11.
No.
So when he said it, he was just, I mean, if it had not been during the time of 9/11, he probably could have gotten away with it. But he called the president of the software company. They called the president of Haynes. And instead of them firing him, they sent out a letter 2 days later and said that he decided not to take the position. So he was busted back down to a regular program. It took about $40,000 out of his salary. So of course he left the company. You know, of course he did. But my thing is, personally, I think he should have been fired because he made a threat. He made a threat. If you call the school, if you call any school and somebody says, we bringing the bomb, we're going to bomb that place, they immediately evacuate the school.
Mm-hmm.
And whoever did it would be punished the highest extent of the law. And I think he should have been done too, but it wasn't my call. So.
Yeah. And to your point, Pat, business needs to hold itself to higher standards than it holds
That's
itself
right.
to. But nonprofits are being forced to.
Mm-hmm.
It's not optional in nonprofits.
Right.
Because people will stop giving. When I was a principal in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, we were given a total of how much our school had to give United Way every year. Because we were a prime partner of United Way, and we had all the events and those kinds of things. And we were told how much our school had to give. And as I told you, we had to write a check to make up the difference if our school didn't give that much. And then we had to write a personal check for $500 because that was what our expectation was that we would pay those kinds of things. I always resented that. But then when we found out that, the lady in charge in Charlotte was making over $1 million a year and spending about $2 million a year on other things, how foolish did the leadership in CMS look?
Right.
But the issue became then, if, people just quit giving. In nonprofits, folks don't have to have your services. I mean, they don't have to give you their money, is my point.
Right.
We were being coerced in Charlotte-Mecklenburg to give the money, but as soon as the bad news came out, all of a sudden CMS backed away from that. Oh, well, we can't make our people give money anymore now. My point is, making employees give money anymore doesn't happen through corporate America anymore. They've been burned too many times. Employees are making less money. They're not getting benefits after 2007. The ordeal in Charlotte was a national kind of beacon for that movement that companies shouldn't be forcing their employees to give money to charity, to do charitable. So people aren't going to be forced to give you money anymore. There was a time when companies, as I said, I worked for one in Charlotte, that forced us to give money. Those days are over. People are going to give their money if they want to. And if you make poor leadership decisions, or if you run on faith and the money doesn't come, or your value, you don't fire the people who do things that don't uphold your values. If you don't separate from those people, you're not going to make it as a nonprofit. And this notion that we'll continue on because we've always continued on, we've been around since forever. No, that's not going to matter. Now I was home at the lake house night before last, I wrote my regular $50 a month check to St. Jude's. I don't know why I do that. I just do. I feel good about them. They probably, I think they have one of the lowest overheads in terms of the money going to where it goes. I don't know. I feel good about St. Jude's.
Yeah.
I always have. I send them a check every month.
Mm-hmm.
It's not enough. I know that. It's mostly to make me feel good about myself, which, how cheap am I that $50 a month makes me feel good about myself? But but I do a couple of big fundraisers for them through some other things. But that's just, I know it's not much. That's $600 a year. That's a pittance to them. But if
everybody gave $1, then they wouldn't have to worry. I mean,
that's exactly right. But the point is not the $50 that I give. I'm a cheapskate. Okay. So, but the point is, I feel good about that. So I'm only giving the money. I'm only giving the things that that I feel need to be, the money needs to go to, and I feel good about. My wife and I do, I don't know, 6 or 8 different things. And when I don't feel good about something, I stop.
Right. Mm-hmm.
We do the Kidney Foundation. We do Susan Coleman. We go downtown and walk when they have the march and all. We do several, but I only do things that make me feel good. And what I have decided that I'm going to do, rather than give one $1,000 or $2,000, I'm going to give a lot of them a little bit. And because I think a lot of them are doing, and that way I don't feel like I'm kind of spreading it around so I don't get burned if one turns out to be bad.
Yeah.
So,
I do have a question for you about that. Do these organizations, do they give you reports or, thank yous or something like that?
Oh, yeah, St. Jude's does, and most of them do. Most of them give you, do a yearly kind of State of the Union and give you an update on what they've done and how much money went versus administrative costs and those things. One of the things that I shop for in nonprofits is low cost of overhead and administration.
Yeah.
One of the things that St. Jude's does to help defray their cost of administration is they put on that golf tournament in Memphis every year. They support and FedEx is big with them because they're out of Memphis too. But that was last weekend was the St. Jude Classic in Memphis, and they get a lot of volunteers, but they make pretty much the money they need to pay all their people from that golf tournament, so that people's donations go to the children's in the hospital. That's one of the things that they do. But yes, we should be giving people a notion of how we spend our.
If you're going to operate a nonprofit, I think that's where things are lacking in that realm and getting them credibility and such, is because people want to know what their money's being used for, and they want transparency, and
Yes.
they want to feel like they're making a difference. And,
and you want to feel like that those people are maybe a little bit better person than you are.
Right. Yeah. Right.
You don't want to be giving your money to people who are questionable, sending out questionable tweets, saying questionable things, or hotheads or ugly. You want to believe that they're better, that they're good people.
Yeah, or they're not having their own pocket.
Exactly, and that they're being held to a higher standard in terms of their personal behavior, that they're good people, that they're quality people. And all of those things influence whether people give to you or not.
Hey, Dr. Lamb, do you remember back in the 90s when United Way, the whole big corporation, it came out how much of the money was actually trickling down to the different states? And do you remember that? I mean, I think it was less than 15%. But the president was making hundreds of millions of dollars. Everybody was making top dollar.
Yeah.
And oh my goodness.
It wasn't just the lady in Charlotte. That was endemic of the whole organization. All the big city people were making millions. And United Way, in large part for a long time was just a kind of a pyramid scheme where the people on the inside were taking the money out.
Yep.
It was not really ever any money going to, or very much going to the people it was intended to go to. They might give them $200, but for every $200 they gave them, they'd keep $200,000 for themselves. I mean, it was a ridiculously small amount. But that, and I don't mean to be vindictive or ugly, but that we let those people off the hook by just telling them they no longer had a job and didn't put them in prison says a lot about us as a society as well.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
It says a lot about us as a society that we would do something as crass as steal charity money and not put those people in prison. But and I guess maybe that's what bothers me is that we need to be more punitive when people abuse the public trust and steal money. That's we need to be. We need for that to. For some reason, people don't know anymore what the expected behavior is. We need to set that expected behavior.
Yeah.
We need for people to understand that you don't steal from charity, and if you do, that there's a price to be paid other than, oh, you can't do that anymore. And a little bit, there's no such thing as shame anymore. You can't just publicly shame somebody. That doesn't cost them anything. We need to, I hate to say that, but we need to be more punitive with people who steal from children's charities, especially.
Yeah.
That's a bad thing.
Yeah. That's true.
Anybody else have any questions, other questions about Zim, Rusty, DeAndre, and Brittany's presentation?
It was good. Enjoyed it.
All right. So what I'm going to do is on where it says on our main menu. So if Brittany, if you'll give me control as the host, what I'm going to do is process this video. I will post it under the main menu that says Zoom session week. I guess it's week 4 for the case study for tonight on the main menu in Blackboard. I'm still viewing Brittany's screen.
Got it.
You are now the host. All right. Share screen. Yes. Desktop. Share screen. All right. So where it says right here, I will Zoom forward case study. I will post our video right here. I probably won't email it to you because it'll be so big it might blow up your email.
Okay.
What I will do is I will upload it to YouTube tonight. I'll put the link here and I'll email you the link. So if you want to go back and view it, so you will have it both here and an email link to YouTube. But Gardner Webb frowns on MP4s. Actually, the actual video, this one's going to be way too big since it's going to be 2 hours long. So the link will be right here, and I will email it to you later tonight.
Okay.
All right?
Sounds
So,
good.
Let's see now. Next week, we meet on June 24th, 9 o'clock in room 209. I'll have breakfast. And then week 6, no class or Zoom and then week 7, because that's the week of the 4th. Week 7, July the 8th. That's our last time to get together. If y'all want, we'll talk next Saturday. If y'all want to come to the lake and have a cookout, I've got the building reserved.
Awesome.
We can do that. So we'll talk about that next Saturday. And then our last 3 are Zooms, just like this one tonight.
Okay.
All righty.
Okay.
So,
Dr. Lamb, what, down at the bottom of that where it says case study, go up.
Case study executive summary.
Yeah, executive summary. What is that?
Is that where we post our PowerPoint?
Right there.
when it says case study and project Dropbox,
No, over on the right-hand side where it says case study 16 executive summary.
right here, you're supposed to write a 2-page summary of what you did.
Okay.
You put your PowerPoint in. Let's see. You put your PowerPoint in this Dropbox over here.
Okay.
But you're supposed to write a 2-page summary of what you did on your case study. Basically, what I'm looking for now there is not a reiteration of the PowerPoint. I want to know the process that you went to. Now, it doesn't have to be 2 pages long. The limit's 2 pages. But as we talked earlier tonight, I'm interested in knowing, how'd y'all go about putting these things together? What'd you do?
Mm-hmm.
I want to know the process.
Okay. Reflection.
Yes.
Okay.
This should not take more than 30 minutes. This is not a research paper. This is a reflection. This is what we did. This is how we did it. This is why we did it. If I was doing this again, I'd do it this way, or I'd do it the same way, or I'd do something different. I heard something tonight that would change my way of thinking. Just a reflection. This is not War and Peace. 2-page maximum. One page is even better. You know, I like people whose thought processes are concise. That's what goes here. And then your PowerPoint goes in this one out here. And the reason why is because of size. Inside here, these don't take, you can't put as big of stuff in here as you can put out here on the menu board for some reason.
So you want us to do individual reflections and put it in here?
Of what your part was or what you would do differently. Or, you know,
Okay, okay.
Since it was a group project, I like for you to have something that individual.
Okay.
It's what
Okay. Okay. Can we upload it by Sunday?
just get it uploaded before August, and I'll be happy.
Okay. Okay. All right.
All right.
Okay.
Everybody good? Any more questions?
No, but Barbara, you have a horror movie glow on you. Something's gonna happen every time because it's got that little glow on your face.
Yeah.
Let me put some light in the background so,
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
so y'all will tell me if somebody's creeping behind me, right?
Right.
We can
It's got a
tell.
little blue glow and there's kind of haloing. And
That's why I said that's even worse.
There you go.
That's kind of scary.
I have an idea, y'all. It's a big one.
Okay. All right. I'll see y'all all next Saturday morning. Y'all have a good week.
Okay,
All right.
thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Hey, Barbara.
Yeah.
All right, Bendy. Yeah. All right. I'll see you guys later.